All right, so if you remember our last lesson, we talked about how Jesus washed the disciples' feet, and we mentioned the names of those disciples. In our story for the rest of the week, which is the story of the Last Supper, we are going to talk more about those disciples, specifically a disciple named Judas. Judas was one of Jesus's friends and followers, but he made some bad choices, and those choices had very dire consequences. So we're going to read a little bit about what that looked like from our Bible storybook. So again, the Last Supper. I'm going to read and then I will show you the pictures. Jesus and the disciples had come to Jerusalem to celebrate the Passover together. Passover was the time for Jewish people to remember how God had helped Moses and the Israelites escape from Pharaoh in Egypt. Jesus and his disciples met in a house to celebrate the Passover meal. During the meal, Jesus took some of the bread and thanked God for it. Then he gave bread to each of the disciples. "This is my body," he told them. Now, I'll get into this now. So, I'll go ahead and show this picture. Sometimes whenever we go to church, our grown-ups will take communion whenever we go up to the front and the pastor gives them bread or a wafer and wine or grape juice, and then oftentimes the children will get a blessing. We do that in remembrance of what Jesus has done and of this moment. This moment is where that practice originates. The first, I guess we call it the first communion, was really at the Last Supper. So that's what this book is referencing. All right, so continuing on. While they were eating, Jesus said something strange. "One of you has made an evil plan against me and is going to help my enemies." The disciples were very surprised to hear this, and they wondered who among them would do such a wicked thing. Jesus then took a piece of bread, dipped it in some sauce, and handed the bread to Judas. He said, "Judas, go and do what you have to do." Without saying a word, Judas got up from his seat, left the room, and went into the night. Only Jesus and Judas knew what the evil plan was about. Next, Jesus took a cup of the wine. He prayed and thanked God for it and told the disciples to drink some of the wine. "This is my blood. It is given for you for the forgiveness of sins," Jesus told them. "I cannot be with you much longer. When I am no longer here, you shall eat bread and drink wine together like this meal we are having. When you do, remember me and everything I have taught you." Jesus knew that it was almost time for him to suffer and die in Jerusalem. But the disciples could not yet understand what was going to happen. So in addition to kind of the origination of communion, I think it's important that we talk about how Jesus knew what was going to happen to him. He knew that he was going to be put to death on a cross for our sins. He knew that. And yet, he let that happen. He chose to sacrifice himself for us. He chose to follow God's plan and to give up his life for us, to suffer and die for us. And the reason that he made that choice isn't because, hey, he thought it would be fun. No, he did that because he loves us so much. That is the extent of Jesus's love for you, that he would give up his life for you. But luckily, we know that the story of the crucifixion doesn't end with crucifixion. It continues on to Easter. So we are going to have a happy ending to our story. But we have to go through the rest of the story to get there. So, yeah.